So yeah, so we're here today. We're going to talk about a use case that we think is really coming really front and center in the threat landscape, and that's utilizing a security data lake, building out a security data lake, and also riding on an open XDR on top of that. Which so today I'm here. I'm joined with Shannon, and again, I don't have an opening slide for Shannon, but I have one. I always have one for me, and I like to keep this casual. So anybody wants to cut me off and ask questions, that's fine, or chat them, and we'll make sure we get them answered. But I've been around for a little bit. I started out really a long time ago at a company called Landcope, which was in Atlanta, and I lived in Atlanta for 19 years. And Landcope, our product was StealthWatch. It was a network analysis security base. So if anyone remembers that. And then we were acquisitioned by Cisco, and I spent 6 years at Cisco. And then here more recently, I've moved over to a company called Hunters. So our product is an open XDR. But I did move to Florida about a year ago, and I do a lot of wildlife photography, and I work on I have a few saltwater aquariums in my house, and that's really my two hobbies. And anytime you guys want to get a hold of me, here's my contact. And like I said, I work at a small startup company now called Hunters, and it's so small that my email address is Brian@Hunters.ai. So pretty simple to remember. And Andy, I'll pause right there if you want to introduce yourself, or Shannon, if you want to introduce yourself. And I know you're on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, my name is Shannon Taylor. I'm the sales director for Mississippi and Alabama. I'm based in Huntsville. My background is heavily in data management, spending 6 years at Informatica, then a couple of years over at App Dynamics before the Cisco acquisition and application performance management. And then about 2 years in the infrastructure world with Rubrik for backup and recovery. And have been at Snowflake now for a bit, working on data and analytics from many different vantage points. So very excited to talk about how Snowflake enables these use cases really under the covers, but more importantly, the things you could do with Hunters when you have access to infinite and scalable and dynamically scalable on the fly storage and compute, what's possible from an ingestion perspective, from a query perspective, and then also from a long-term perspective, being able to keep a holistic security data lake and even correlate that to other types of data, business data, HR data, whether it's operational or security driven, just be able to manage that from that perspective and really try to bring world-class analytics to the security space. Security for so long has been very siloed, very individual syntaxes with different log systems, but really trying to bring the depth and breadth that we have from an analytics perspective, whether it's semi-structured data, structured data, or even unstructured data, to be able to bring that to threat detection and to vulnerability management and other use cases. So Brian, please take it away, because Hunters is the cool stuff.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks. And so I just have a little agenda here, and I have some slides I want to go through, just kind of set up and give you a background of everything. I try not to make it too boring, and then I'll jump into the demo and show you what it looks like and what Hunters XDR looks like. But I just wanted to go over a couple things, and I'm not really telling you guys anything, but just to kind of bring up to the front, to kind of wrap your head around, what an XDR can do. But some of the challenges that everyone is experiencing is, siloed data. Having multiple and different solutions in your security stack and having to go look at each security stack separately, correlating those in a very manual process that can be very noisy, very time consuming, and just slow the whole time to response almost to where it's not as functional. And also, because you're doing things very manually, it's very ununiformed in the decision. So you might have a threat hunter working today that has more experience than the person tomorrow, and things are done differently, and it's very hard to uphold standards if things aren't done the same way every time. And that's what an XDR can really provide to you. So there's a lot of key things here. Is like, we're going to ingest all the logs, all the assets, and have a single source of truth. And that's where any XDR is going to build out some sort of data lake, and ours is we're building it out for you into a Snowflake security data lake. That's your data, and we're going to analyze that and like Shannon said, scale and burst and be very efficient. The performance is really unrivaled, and then also just the expense and having that partnership wrapped around all that data is really valuable. So what is an open XDR? You know, and I went and just got this. This is just really a standard generic definition. And an XDR is really a cross-layer detections and response. That's what it means. But what is it really? What's the value of that to you? And the value is that we're collecting data sets from all different siloed sources, putting them together, looking at them as a whole, and cross-correlating the different events that are happening to come up with a faster detection, automatically doing threat detections and threat hunting to bubble up really the grunt work of threat hunters and incident response teams to constantly be doing that hunting and looking into all that data and letting you know what's important. So the significance, and I like to show this, is really the significance of having a open XDR is that correlation of threat hunting, and it's where we're being able to say, and I'll go into a little bit more in depth in the demo, but we're getting information from, say, an EDR, and then inside the cloud environment, and we're correlating that whole malicious campaign, malicious activity together, and maybe as each individual event doesn't mean as much, but put together as a whole story, as a whole campaign, is much more meaningful and maybe is a lot more malicious than you once thought. And being able to put all that information into a security data lake like Snowflake, and being able to analyze that very quickly, and we're able to cross-correlate all the different entities and elements in any campaign, and that's really the power behind Hunters and an open XDR. And I'll go more in depth in this. And also having that flexible ingestion. So even though we're analyzing the data, we're putting it in, and we're running our algorithms across in our detectors and correlate it, you still have access to all of that data. So you can still run queries into that data. So maybe, you know, I like to say an open XDR has something for a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 person. So, and it is your data, because it is going to that security data lake that we're writing on top of. So Hunters, what is the Hunters Open XDR? And I'll stop here and just say that Hunters, you know, we are relatively new. We've been around for a few years. When we came out of and we were developed, our headquarters is in Israel, and our founders came out of the unit 8200, which is really the NSA equivalent, and they were cyber threat adversaries, and they were commanders that managed their own set of servers. So that's really how we're built. We're built on top of that nation-state threat hunting, and we went back 10 years and built all the different techniques and tactics and procedures in, and then we're constantly adding and massaging those. So our platform is, we're taking your organizational context, so those raw data feeds, so it could be your endpoint data feeds, your DNS, your firewalls, your cloud environment, and we're running our algorithms on top of that, almost like a second layer of analytics. And then we're also looking at all of your existing alerts. So, you know, what did your EDR fire off on? And we're taking that into account and analyzing that. And then we also we have our own threat intelligence feeds that we have in. We have several of them coming in, like Alien Vault and Tor nodes. And you can also, if you have your own subscriptions or you've kept your own and build out your own IOC databases, you can put those into the product, and we'll utilize those. And I'll show you that. But really, how we're functioning is on the bottom of this slide is where we're taking in all that information. So it's kind of like that sensory layer, those logs, that data ingestion of your cloud, your firewall, your EDRs. And we have a very flexible ingestion. So this is where we're be able to take all different kind of data sets in, and we run that across a unified schema. And that's really what makes an open XDR very different from other siloed XDRs, is because we don't look at the data siloed. After we run it across the unified schema, we look at it as a whole set. And then we run it across our detection layers. And then we're graphically correlating those. And this is all done automatically. We're 24/7, where we're constantly threat hunting and running down every leads. And typically you'll see in a solution where they kind of have a noise governor, and they only want the certain leads to bubble up to alerts. But what we do is we look at every lead, amplify that signal, and then ask hundreds of questions and run those leads down to see if there's something there. Is there something important that we need to take to the next step? And we do that. So typically, then this is not, the whole set. Being an open XDR, we pretty much take everything in, but we do have, I like to show this slide just to kind of say what we typically take in is endpoint, cloud, and identity. Those are I think the pillars of an open XDR. If you just have two or just have one, we can't add value. But of course, like any other analytics engine, the more you put in, the better it becomes. Typically you'll see that, and then added on as firewall, human resource like ADP logs, or so we know if someone has been fired, is someone badged into a certain building somewhere that they're now logging in to AWS from Europe, different things. So we can take that in. And our architecture here is really just this is kind of a busy slide, but really just shows you that we bring all that data in, those logs and those alerts and that data set. And we're not only running it across our automated systems and detectors, but we're also ingesting that and creating that Snowflake data lake, which is very important. And then that Snowflake data lake can run, any in Google or AWS or Azure, and you can interact with that separately. And it is your data. I think that's another important aspect to an open XDR. It's not siloed. It's not part of a product. We're riding on top of it, and that is your data. And this is why Snowflake. Why did we choose Snowflake? Why is that a good partnership? And it really is because of the performance and the be able to handle and scale. So for small deployments, and it keeps growing, or national environments, or even global environments, we can scale to. And so, and I'll just put this in here that we can there's a lot of people build out SIMs, and that security data lake is a lot of times similar to a SIM, and we can see that there's a cost associated with the SIM that we can help out augment that. And some of our customers, they don't have a SIM, and it's something for us. We can build this out for them and maintain it, or they do have a SIM, and we can augment that by putting this security information into a separate data lake, and therefore have its separate resources dedicated to it and cost. All right, so that's it. I don't know on the format here. I don't know if there's been any questions asked, but if you want me to stop and before I do a demo, if anyone has any questions that you want to ask, or Shannon, you want to add anything, I think now's a good spot.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think that's really important about being able to keep your data, right? This isn't piped into a product where they have access to it. I mean, you have access to all the raw data. So be it JSON, Avro, Parquet, ORC, XML, MQQT, whatever format the data may be in, semi-structured, structured, or even unstructured. You can ingest it into Hunters, and it's going to live long-term in Snowflake and at a really reasonable cost. When you look at what the cost would be from a lot of licensing of other products that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a terabyte, Snowflake is $23 a terabyte per month, compressed at 5x. So when you look in the data and analytics world, why we've grown as much as we've grown, dramatic savings in terms of long-term storage. Most of the time, storage is less than 5% of your actual bill. And then the only other thing you look at from a Snowflake perspective is the compute. And since we separate the storage and compute, there's no need for capacity planning, and there's never any concurrency. So you're never going to have one individual job or query that bogs down your entire environment, because everybody has the compute that they need. So whether it's an operational team that's looking at this data, or it's a threat hunting team looking at this data, no one's going to slow anybody else down or stop any work, because everyone has access to as much compute as they possibly need. And all teams have access to the data. And often, even outside security use cases, 30 to 40% of the data that you're looking at, whether it's an analytical use case, a business use case, an HR use case, it's the same data. So it really helps you unify that data in one spot and then use it for as many uses as you need. Go ahead, Brian.
All right.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it sounds like the format here is open to interruption.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, cool.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage all our listeners, people who are watching the upcoming demo, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is just an opportunity to sort of inject. I mean, questions or I'm assuming comments are welcome. Anecdotes, pain points, similar experiences. I mean, share with the group. I'd like to picture this virtual engagement more like a giant round table. If you guys are cool with that, I think that's how you picture it too, like a giant round table, more than a stage and a projector. So
yeah,
it's a little different than some of the other talks you've heard today. So just sort of want to throw that out there, and maybe as you watch the demo, it'll spark something. And if I heard them correctly, they're open to the interruption. So, go for that. Otherwise, yeah, thank you. Please show us a demo. Love demos.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll start the demo. And again, anyone wants to interrupt, I can only take my voice so long at a time. So please interrupt and ask questions if you want. So this is the UI. And so we kind of come in here, we can see, in this case, we've taken in 28 terabytes of raw data. And those ingestions are coming in from all types of sources. So we have AWS, CrowdStrike, Windows event logs, Zscaler, Okta, and even ADP and Zoom. And so we're taking that information in, and I'll show you in a little bit how simple and easy that is to do. But we take it in, we start analyzing it, and we have detectors. And so in this case, we've taken the 28 terabytes of data and we've bubbled up 900 leads. Now these aren't alerts. These aren't even things that maybe you don't even want to look at, right? Because these are just simply leads that we're going to now start running down and doing that threat hunting across those. And then we're going to take those and say, hey, we've determined through our algorithms, through what's going on, that these are hot leads. And those hot leads are where we really start scoring things. So on the detector side, these are where Hunters has built all these different hundreds of detectors that's looking and sifting across. And we've broken it up into the different the different environments. So you have your cloud, your enterprise. So if I click on here, we have taken those and referenced them across our detectors across the MITRE matrix, attack matrix. And we can see by default that the information, the data that we're ingesting, that you're sending to us, we already have those turned on. And this is what we're able to plug the holes in or give you visibility into based on the data that we're receiving. So in this case, like here, account manipulation, we have 3 different detectors that are looking for that. Here's what the description is. You can actually go in and we can kind of drill down, get a little bit different view, show you what the algorithms are that are looking at this information, what's going to trigger it. And we even go so far as to give you the ability to fine tune and add any rules. Typically, I don't see customers or people using this do that. They just kind of set it and forget it. But if you have a specific use case that you wanted to really zero in on, you can do that. But like in this case, say here we've got CloudTrail and VPC logs coming in from AWS, and say, hey, we do have a WAF in AWS. So if we turn those logs on, we can show you, well, now we just added 3 more detectors for public-facing applications. And then we have this, again, broken up into the different environments. So like, here's the enterprise, which is going to show a lot more. And again, if you go down and say, if I turned on, say a PAN firewall, that's going to end up turning on 19 more detectors. So by default, we show you what's covered, but we also give you the ability to, if you added more data, what else we would add to the mix. So And then if I go down here into the leads, this is where, we start scoring things, and, from 0 to 100, we've moved it up. In this case, we've taken all those terabytes, bubbled up those 900 leads, and then presented these hot leads and said, hey, here's things that we're going to start analyzing and looking at. So in this case, here's like a security utility tool on a suspicious download, or there's an IOC that's been found, or there's a bits job that's going on. And we're looking at those, and we're alerting on that and giving it, and it's a fluid system. So what I mean by that is, say, that event is situational aware. And so say you're in IT and you start up Nmap, 10 times a week. Well, we're going to look at that. We're going to score that, but it's going to be a lower score than, say, you work in, the accounting department, and you've never turned on bitmap, and this is the Nmap, and this is the first time we've seen it. We're going to score that higher. But then we take it one step further, and this is really where we start adding this really value, and that's those hot stories. And this is the page I see people in a lot, and that's where we're cross-correlating between the different solutions. And if you go over here into the stories page, so we can see, and I have one, I like the demo here, that if I'll go in. And so in this case right here, this was a phishing attempt by a user's, and his name's Larry Miller. And if I go in, we can see that there's really just, there's 4 different events that have occurred that in this campaign. And it started out with a CrowdStrike agent telling us that, hey, this person went to a low reputation URL, but really, and this is from the raw event log, so this isn't anything that they've alerted on. And also the score was only an 18. And then a few minutes later, someone actually logged into Azure, and it was a risky sign-on as they bypassed the multi-factor authentication. And again, it was only scored a 56. And if I scroll down here, you'll see some are 25s and some are 50s. But as we cross-correlated this and put this story together, we also score the whole story as a whole, and it's much more meaningful. So we were able to take this CrowdStrike agent, this EDR, and associate it with the email address that was used to log in Azure. And now we know that this is all one campaign. This is all coming from one computer or one person. And so if I go in, I can look at this in a few different ways. I can go in and start, if some stories get really long and I just want to look at, say I want to look at all the low reputation domains people went to, or the risky sign-ons, right? And then if I scroll in here, I can actually start drilling down and look at each one of the events that occurred and pop those open, and I can show you all the different entities and elements in each one of these. And you can start drilling in, you can pivot over and start doing a manual investigation if you want, and you can notate this or just copy something to the clipboard. But if I click on this on the side here and this table comes out, these are all the questions that we are automatically asking. And you can see how we're gaining all the different elements and the entities and recognizing what the situation is for each one of these events. So if I hit expand, you can see all the, so this is where we found out, hey, this is the username is Larry Miller, and this is his IP address that he's calling in from. Here's his internal IP address. Here's his email account. And we even show you the logic. So these are the logics that we're asking in an automated fashion on all these different leads. And then as we put this together, we actually show you. So I'm going to pull out, and it's a very important aspect of this cross correlation. So we'll show you the map, and let me hide this. So in this case right here, you can see the different correlations and how we put this together. So if I look come over here, you can see that here's the CrowdStrike low reputation URL and how we started crossing this. But I like to look, I'll do a little cleaned up map look. And most of the customers I see, they don't necessarily use these maps, but I think it's good to go see what it is. They typically stay in that story view. But right here, CrowdStrike went to this agent, this agent ID went to a low reputation URL, and that agent ID is associated with this username, Larry Miller. And then a few minutes later, there was that risky sign-on in Azure with this email address that's also associated with that username. So now you can see the crossing of the correlation and how we're putting this together from on-prem to cloud. And then a little bit later, he made a snapshot and then of volumes, and then put some code in to exploit that and drive that and take that out of the Azure environment. So that's something that's just very simple what we do and very powerful to be able to do that. And then from here, if you want, you can start creating your story. You can add to a report. So we could go here and add this to a report or create a new report. And let's see what that really looks like. If I go right here, it would start showing. It would bring over all the information, the elements, the entities that were pertinent with it, the risks, the summaries, and then it brings in that story. And then also the timelines and the important events that happen in each one of those timelines, where it came from. And then down here on the bottom these were the sources that we use to create the story to give you the visibility for this campaign. All right. But then you do have a way of just starting a manual investigation, right? So I could go in here and just say, type in Larry Miller. And if I do that, I can go and it will pull back anything that we've learned about this element, any correlations. So you could put an IP address here, you can put a shell command line here, whatever you want. This is where you're kind of interacting with that raw data. And I kind of say this is like that layer 2, because this isn't like pure just, we're giving you what we do expose just the Snowflake command line, so you can start doing your own queries if you want. But this is kind of like that layer 2, where we're pulling back all the different things. And then here are all the drill down questions we've asked about that element. We do give you the visibility into all of your endpoints or your cloud environments. So like right here, and this one is a demo system. There's not very many here, but like if you have 1,000 endpoints deployed or 10,000, you'll start seeing how this really, and you can, and a lot of times I'll go here, I can sort by, and you'll see some Windows 7s and a lot of customers still, and then I can kind of drill down into those and see the users. And I can even take it as far as like saying, hey, show me all the Windows 7s that did a command line executable, and just kind of bubble all that out. We do go in and show you all the leads, and you can start drilling down. And this is where it kind of starts getting a little more, I would say, moving up from layer 1 to layer 2, even to layer 3 threat hunters. So we again break that up into the different environments. So if I go, like say AWS, or let's just get right here to the enterprise. And if I can scroll down, you'll see all the different leads that we've scored. If they're scored high, if they're in a story, and if I come in, I can start. So let's say like right here, let's look for like let's just do this one, some binary and temporary folder. So I can drill down. There's 2 of them that's going off, and it kind of breaks those up. Again, I can drill into this. I can see what all the questions that were asked about this. We say, hey, this is really this is bad. And then you can also, and let's go into one that's these bit jobs. I can pull this out into a separate tab, so I can start sifting through the larger data set and not just by each different element. So I can, if I wanted to, I can say, hey, sort this by device name. I'll pull this up here. So it gives me that. And then I can start drilling down, start seeing the questions, and start drilling into that a little more granular into that data. And then how we get all of this data in is very simple. So this is just our ingestion. If I get here to the global sources, that's all the different feeds that we're taking in and IOC. So this is all comes with the product. And then this is where if you have your own subscriptions, you can add those to it. or your own data set. But if I go back to the organizational sources, I could click on, let's just say AWS. So let's go and log in and start taking in AWS. So you'll just give us, access to an S3 bucket that's going in, typically through a cross account role. And then you just choose what you want. So let's just say it's, let's say it's CloudTrail, and then on what the format is. And then a really unique feature is we're able to go back in time. So say you had an incident and you wanted to go back, if you have those logs back for the last 3 months, you can just pick that date, and then it will bring all that data in and run those analytics on top of that in chronological order, so you can see how it played out. So I think that's a very powerful. And then as you're bringing this data in, we're building out that Snowflake data lake for you, and we even have that right here, and you'll see your name and the account number it's under, and you'll put that right in. And that's all part of the solution. So it's not, we'll maintain it for you and build it out for you on a go forward basis. So any questions? All right.
Speechless, Brian. They're speechless.
I mean, I'm enjoying.
That are folks.
I'm enjoying what I have a chance to hear and listen to. I have to be honest, I'm doing a little conference stuff in between, but I mean, usually what it means when you don't get any questions is like it's pretty clear. People understand what they're being seen, but maybe they're having trouble relating, or not sure actually exactly what it's going to do for them, or how to take it to the next step. I mean, as we get near the end, track 1 will kick off the afternoon keynote at 1 o'clock, and we'll do a little housekeeping. So you got plenty of time. But maybe that's sort of my question is, what's next? Maybe what can I do with this? Maybe some anecdotes and information, some experiences you had, just sort of related would be cool for me to hear. And I'm just spitballing ideas, thinking out loud, a little brainstorm. If anybody else has got some questions or thoughts, I mean, jump in, throw it in the chat, make a comment, share your thoughts, please.
So I will reiterate that one thing that a lot of people have a question on is, like, when they see this is, how, again, like you just kind of mentioned, how's this going to benefit me, and how do I get started? Or why do I need this? Right. And so we kind of talked about the being able to automate a lot of the threat hunting and cross correlating with the events. But one question a lot of people ask is, well, if I already have these alerts going off, then what is this adding? And that's really where, if you come in and go, let's just go down here to CrowdStrike, you'll see that there's 2 different feeds coming in. There's raw events, and typically those are 10 times more than the actual detections that are going off. So we have our analytics running on both of those, and then we're cross correlating against all the other solutions that you're bringing in, and we do point those out. So like if you go to the leads, you'll have leads and then alerts. So the alerts are those alerts that are native to each individual solution. So you can see that there was 82 CrowdStrike alerts, and there was 26 Microsoft alerts and things like that. But then all the other leads are coming from those raw events that we're looking at. And so I think now more than ever, a really big use case for this is the hybrid environment of cloud and on-prem. And how do I get those logs in and look at that as a whole? And that's something that we do really well. And so we're able to, look at and pull in telemetry from AWS and Azure, and your on-prem, and your firewall, and see if things are moving back and forth. So I started with a POC last week with a customer, and they had, there's a new piece of malware going out called Bulldog, and what it is, it's really for the cloud, and it tries to exploit and get inside a cloud environment and pull data out. And what we found is inside the UI, after just running for one day, was they actually had 6 on-prem Macs infected with it that were probing their Azure and AWS, and actually had gotten into one S3 bucket. So that's kind of how you'll see where it was such a slow and low, and it had just been put on any IOC list 2 days prior. So it was really it wasn't quite a 0 day, but it was almost there. Nothing was firing off on it. And we were able to cross correlate that and come back and see where it went, what was guard duty, what was CloudTrail saying about it, and what was and we had actually put the story together. That's how we knew it. We had put our hot story together, and it was actually, when I went here, it was only 4 different events, but when you went over here and you could see, it was actually 6 different internal workstations that were doing it.
Hey, Brian, you have a question? Question is, my company and I in general, I'm hesitant to send our logs to a cloud service. What can you say to convince someone who's hesitant to use a service like Hunters on Snowflake?
Yeah, so and we did get that. I mean, not everyone, the cloud is not adopted by everyone yet, and I think that's one of the hesitance is you're sending it somewhere else. But I would say that in the manner that the information is sent. So again, now we're talking, there's 2 ways and 2 repositories. One is it's already in the cloud. So when we get access to that information, we reside in the cloud, and we can pull that information across. And it's typically, it's always encrypted, and then through a tunnel. And then when it's on-prem, we can do it a few different ways, and it depends on typically what type of data it is. So through an API, or through where you control it and you're putting it somewhere for us. So eventually it's going to get to an S3 bucket for us. So however you put it there. So, and I like it when the customers create their own tunnels, push it up to us on a scheduled basis, so they control it and they control everything. And then once it's in the cloud, and once it's in Snowflake, and I'll let Shannon answer more in depth, but it is encrypted, it is keyed, those keys are maintained and changed out periodically. And there's a lot of controls around access and permissions.
Yeah, if y'all aren't familiar, and I know that some folks may not be as familiar with Snowflake, especially from a traditional data analytics perspective, but we've grown to be the world's largest analytics and data provider just in 4 years. The largest on AWS, Azure, and GCP. A lot of people heard about our IPO last summer. It made a lot of noise. But security and compliance and governance is really the key to Snowflake. It was built that way. It was a purpose-built platform from the ground up to take advantage of the scale and the separation of storage and compute at the cloud, not just bolting on other technologies, not just having to rebuild clusters and wait for those to come up, but actually scalably move up and down by that moment. So it's a large multi-tenant environment. We're actually data blind from the Snowflake perspective, but also from a security compliance perspective, whether it's SOC 1, SOC 2, PCI DSS, FedRAMP moderate, HIPAA high trust, anything you can imagine, right? The world's largest businesses are running their key important PII, PHI, PCI customer data through Snowflake, from the world's largest financial institutions to aerospace and defense to consumer to you name it. Security is really something that we lean into, and love to have that conversation. And logs and security is really a place where a lot of companies start with Snowflake and then also go from there if they're not already have initiatives around the marketing side of the house or the analytics or data science side of the house, which is the other areas where we play really heavily traditionally. But yeah, I'd love to share more information there, but there's a lot online around our compliance and governance. and the role-based access controls, the dynamic data masking, everything that's built into Snowflake. And it's all delivered as a service. So there's nothing there for any of your teams to manage. It's just there to be able to load data, query data, and connect your tools.
And when I was at Cisco, I came out of the DoD and Fed space, and I was there for long enough to see the adoption of the cloud. And so, and being, making sure that everyone's Fed ramped and SOC 2 certified. And so, I think that's a question you should always be asking any vendor that's in the cloud is, who else is using your product and how is it being secured? So that's a very fair question, right? It's good.
Yeah, and I know your background, Brian, with Cisco. Cisco actually was one of the first global enterprise companies to use Snowflake for this exact use case. So you can actually Google that and find it. It's there. And there's a lot of other large organizations that are using Snowflake just for security, even outside of analytics.
So I'm going to go drop off. I'm going to move to the other track. So we're not going to start the other one for about 10 or 15 minutes. I've got some things to take care of. And I'm excited that the last thing I got to hear was the security of the product. I think that's pretty important, especially you see supply chain compromise and other issues happening where people are having trouble because of the thing they're using. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys have considered that and are actively defending. So that's pretty cool. So I wanted to give an extra thanks. I love the presentation. I think you guys did a great demo. We appreciate all your support, not just BSides, but NAC ISSA. We appreciate you very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.